Alright guys, so the app that we're going to be building today is going to be a lot more difficult than the blog app, so just bear with me and let's get started.
Okay, so you've completed the blog, and now we will be looking at what we will be building in this next section. And basically what it is it's a mailbox so that users can message other users that are connected to the site. And so I have two windows open, which are both signed out, and I'm just going to log into this window with my password and my email, and I'll log in. And you see now we have my inbox with conversations and new messages. Then on the other field, I'm just going to sign up with test@test.com as the email, and I'll say password will be password 123, password 123, and I'll sign up, and now I have the same as the other user. So if you see, if we expand that, I can go to all conversations, and then all the users. I'll refresh that. And you see I have one conversation, but there are two users. And this allows us to message any user on the site, but not have a conversation with every single user. So I'm just going to message myself, and I'll say hi. So I'll send a reply, and then I will send another message. So I'll reply by saying hello. And basically now you can go back and forth sending each other more letters than actual messages, but it's still really cool. So you see we have all the users here, and then all the conversations over there. And of course, all the link will be on the GitHub, and I didn't do too much with the styling this time, but you can definitely customize it and make it your own. So without further ado, I will see you in the next video so we can start making this amazing application. Sweet. Alright, so now that you know what our application actually looks like, it's time for us to actually start coding our application. So I'll cd into my programs directory, and then we'll type in Rails new, and we'll call our application mailbox. Alright, so I'll wait for that to run, and we're good. So next I'll cd into mailbox, and I'll clear the terminal. And then, after that, we are going to open up all the files in the mailbox using my favorite text editor, Atom. So now that we have our program open, I'm going to quit the terminal and go to the terminal that's built into my program, and we'll do git init to initialize a Git repository, and then git add dot, not comma, and git commit -m, and we'll call this commit our initial commit, which is that's just the standard. Alright, so I'll minimize the terminal and then go to our gem file so we can install Devise. So we'll delete this big comment here and do gem devise. Alright, save it, open up the terminal, and do bundle install. Okay, so now that bundle install is done, we'll do Rails G Devise install. And you should already know, this should be a review to you, because we have already done this when we built our last project. So now we'll do Rails G Devise user to create the user model associated with Devise. And then I'll say Rails generate Devise views so we can actually see what's going on and not have to code it ourselves. And finally, we'll do rake db migrate to add all this information into our database. Okay, so last I'll do git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll call this commit installed Devise. Okay, great guys. So the next thing that we will be working with is creating our own migrations so that we can customize our application and not have to use scaffolds. So without further ado, I will see you in the next video. Sweet! Alright guys, so today we will be working with migrations, and basically what migrations do is they allow our application to communicate with a database so that we can store stuff and stuff doesn't get deleted. And creating them is very simple. We already did it when we worked with Devise. All we do is do Rails G migration and then the name of the migration, which we will call create conversations in this instance. So let me type that in, create conversations. Great, and now I press enter. And you will see what this will do is create a conversations migration, and then we will be able to use Ruby to directly contact the database, which is really cool. So I'll open up db/migrate, and you'll see we have create conversations.rb with a bunch of text showing when we created this migration. And we have create table conversations do, and in here we are going to create the table with all of our conversations. So t.integer, which stands for table.integer, and we'll set a variable sender ID. So we have an integer which is going to show the ID of the sender, and then t.integer, which will be recipient ID, which will show the ID of the user who is receiving the conversation. So yeah, it's pretty basic. And then at the bottom, what we're going to do is do t.timestamps. And this is a really cool feature. What this allows us to do is it gives a date to everything. So when you create a new conversation, it stores that date in the database, which I think is very useful. So we'll save that migration, and I'll close out of it. And we'll create another migration for messages. So Rails G migration, create messages, now that we have a conversation to hold those messages. And then I'll run, we'll open up the file in db/migrate. 1 second. Great, and then in the create table messages, do t. We will say t.text, so have a text, and we'll give our message a body. And then t.references. Alright, so this will reference the conversation. So that way we have each message being assigned to a conversation and not just random messages all over the place. And we'll do index true. And we're basically going to do the same thing again by doing t.references, if I could spell, t.references, and we'll do user. So each user has obviously different messages that are assigned to them. And we'll set index to true again. And then we'll go down to the bottom and do t.timestamps so that we can put a date on everything and make everything a lot much easier to search. So now we're going to do rake db migrate to migrate the database. And close out of that. So when we migrate the database, this will edit all of our code and put it into there. Alright, great. So we are pretty much done. All we have to do is do our git stuff. So we'll do git add dot, and then git commit -m, and we'll call this commit, we'll say created migrations for conversations and messages. Alright, great. So we are pretty much done. I will see you in the next video. Sweet. Alright, so today we will be working with creating the conversation model. And basically what a model is it is a way for the database to connect with our application. And this is going to be pretty tricky, so bear with me. First thing we have to do is go into app/models, and we'll create a new file, and we'll call that file conversation.rb. Alright, and we'll save that. And then we'll create a class. So I'll do class, and the class will be called conversation. And that will inherit with the less than sign to active record : base. Great. So now inside of our model, the first thing that I want to do is make sure that this belongs _to the sender and the foreign key. So we'll set the foreign key to be equal to the sender ID, and we'll give it a class of, let's say, user. So class name user belongs to sender, the foreign key is sender ID, the class name is user. Now let's copy this and let's just change it so that instead of sender we have recipient, and instead of sender ID we have recipient ID, and it does the same thing. Cool. Now at the bottom here, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our post has many messages and depends if the message is destroyed. So dependent destroy. Great. And I'll scroll down and we'll say it validates underscore uniqueness underscore of, and we'll say sender ID with comma space scope, which is going to be equal to recipient ID. Cool. So after that, what I'm going to do is go down to the bottom now that we validate the uniqueness and set that scope between, and bear with me, it's about to get tricky. We're going to say sender ID, comma, recipient ID, do, and then inside this loop, what we're going to say is where, open up some parentheses, then some strings, conversations dot sender ID equals question mark and conversations dot recipient ID equals question mark. Then what we're going to have it do is we're going to say or, so we'll run this code, or copy it, make sure to put in that extra parentheses at the side. So or we'll have the same thing, and then we'll say sender ID, recipient ID, and sender ID. Okay, great. So we'll save that, and we are done with the conversation model. Sorry that it was so complicated, but eventually you will learn to understand this code. Now let's just do git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll call this commit created conversation model. Okay, great. Thanks for staying with me, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Sweet. Alright guys, so in this video we will be creating the messages model, and I apologize for the last video being a little bit hard for some people, but don't worry, you wouldn't learn if everything was easy. So in this video we are going to create the message model, and in order to do that we're going to go into app, models, and then just like the last video I'll click on models, do new file, and we'll name the model message.rb. Great, so in here we are going to create a class. So I'll set class of message, which is going to inherit from active record colon base. Then I'll just add a little end right there. And inside here, first thing we're going to do belongs to, and we'll make sure that a message belongs to a conversation, and then belongs to user. So we'll make sure that the message belongs to a user. And we'll go down and we'll say validates presence of, and we'll validate the presence of a body. of a conversation ID, and we'll validate the presence of a user ID. Okay, so our code's looking pretty good so far. Next, I'm just going to paste in a little thing, and what this is going to do is it's going to make our application look nicer by creating a string that's going to show the time at which a message was created. And you can just copy and paste this. It's not really important into what we're learning. So now I'll open up the terminal. We'll do git add dot and git commit -m, and I'll say created message model, and we're done. So sweet. I will see you in the next video. Peace. Alright guys, so now we will create the controller for our conversations so that we can actually hold conversations and have everything work out well. And in order to do that, the first thing that I'm going to do is we'll go into app, controllers, and then inside of there we'll create a new file, and I'll call this file conversations_controller.rb. Great, so inside of here we're going to create a class like we always do, and the class name will be conversation controller, which is going to inherit from application controller. And remember the camel case. Great, so in here first I'm going to set a before action, so before underscore action, and what this is going to do is make sure that no unauthenticated users get access to the conversations. So before action :authenticate underscore user with an exclamation point, because there won't be any show method or anything. And first we will create a def index, and so for the index page we will show at users, which will equal user.all, and we will also show at conversations, and at conversations will equal conversation.all with a capital C. Alright, great. So next we're going to go down and do a create method. And this is going to be in two parts. So in order to do the two parts, I'm going to set up an if statement. So in our if statement, I will say if conversation dot between, so if there's a conversation between params of the sender ID, sender underscore ID, and params of the recipient underscore ID. So if the user is either a sender or a receiver, dot present, so if that exists, if there are conversations, basically, to put it that way, we are going to say in here at conversation is going to be equal to conversation dot between the params of the sender ID and the params of the recipient ID. So basically this is what this is saying, is that if you already try to create a conversation with someone who you already have a conversation with, it's going to still show all of your messages, which is nice. And we'll also add a dot first at the end of that. And now let's create an else statement. So if the conversation is brand new, then we'll just say at conversation is going to be equal to conversation dot create with an exclamation point, and we'll give it the params of conversation underscore params, which we will declare at the end of the video. Great, so now I will end this if statement, and then right before we end the create method, we are going to redirect to the messages path, or the path for the conversation messages. So conversation underscore messages underscore path, keeping at conversation in mind. So we pass that in there and we are good. So now all we have to do is go down and create a private method where we will store our conversation params. So we'll define the conversation underscore params. And then inside of here, that will simply just be params dot permit, and we will permit a sender ID, sender underscore ID, and a recipient underscore ID. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much our application. And oops, let me add a colon to that. So yeah, let's just go over what this does. So first, it authenticates the user. And then after that, on the index page, it will show all of the users and all of the conversations. So you can add a user. And if the conversation already exists, then it will show that. Or if it doesn't, then it will create a conversation and it will redirect to that conversation. So great, guys, that's pretty much it. I know this was a long video, but hopefully you understood it all. And without further ado, I will see you in the next video where we can work on our application a little bit more. Sweet. Alright, guys, so in this video, we will be creating the controller for our messages action. And in order to do that, we're going to go to app controllers and create a new file, and we'll call this file messages controller.rb. And I'll open that up and say class. We'll give this class messages controller, which inherits from application controller. Great. So we'll end that. And then inside of here, I'm just going to copy and paste a before action. And what the before action is doing, it's getting at conversation, conversation.find params, conversation ID. Great. So now we'll scroll down and I'll say def index. And inside of here, I have some code written that I'm about to paste in. So at messages equals conversation dot messages at conversation dot messages, excuse me. And then I'll scroll down and at message singular will equal at conversation dot messages dot new. All right. And then also I'll do a new method, and I'll say the exact same thing as we have in our index method, which is at message will equal at conversation dot messages dot new. Okay, great. So now let's do the create method. So def create. I'll end that. And then inside of here, what we're going to put is at message equals conversation dot messages dot new message params. And we'll define message params later. So if at message dot save, then we'll open this up and we'll redirect to conversation messages path with at conversation. Good. And then we'll close that out. And we are going to go down to the bottom of our application right before the last end statement and create a private method with def message params. And it's going to be params.require message.permit body and user ID. So now let's open up our terminal, do git add dot and git commit -m, and we'll call this created messages controller. Okay, great. So we are now done with all of our controllers. Now we're going to start working on the views, and I will see you in the next video. Peace. Alright guys, so today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and instead of going to bootswatch.com, we're going to go to getbootstrap.com and get the CDN. So in order to do that, we are going to go to getting started, and you see here, if we scroll down, you can download Bootstrap, or you can just copy the Bootstrap CDN right here, and then we can paste this into the head part of our application.html.erb. So I'll go to views, layouts, application.html.erb, and then paste it in the head. Okay, so we'll save that, and now we have Bootstrap in our application. So I'll open up the terminal, do git add dot git commit dash m, and we'll name this commit installed Bootstrap CDN. And we're done. So sweet guys, I'll see you in the next video. Peace. Alright guys, so now that we have created the database for our application, now that we've created the controllers and the models for our application, it starts to actually create the part of our application where we can see what's going on, and that's going to be in the views folder. So I am going to go over to app views, and then once we are there, I'll create a new folder, and we'll call this folder conversations. And then inside the conversations folder, I'm going to create a new file, and that file is going to be index.html.erb. Great, and then inside of here, I'm just going to copy and paste some code, since most of it's styling, and I'll just show you what the coding part of it actually does. So first thing to note off here, we have a lot of styling, and we have a conversations and a message part, and if you click on that, then it'll show you all the conversations, and it'll show all the conversations that it thinks you're involved in. And it does the same thing when we click on new message. It shows all the users except for the current user ID, which is very useful. Now I'm going to create another new folder for the messages. So messages will be the name of the folder, and we'll create a new file, and I'll call that file index.html.erb again. Alright, and I'm going to do the same thing, just copy and paste some code into here and then explain what the coding part actually is. So in here you see we have a form for the conversation and the message, and it's going to display a tulip, a Bootstrap tulip, which you can read more about in the index, in the resources for this video. And yeah, it's very nice. So now we're pretty much done with our application. So I'm going to open up the terminal and say git add dot git commit dash m, and we'll name this commit styled and coded views. Great, so all we need to do is make sure that we can get the routes working, and I will see you in the next video. Alright guys, so we have our application all coded, but we just need to make sure that we have the routes in it. And basically, if we open up the terminal and we type in rake routes, it shows all the different routes for our application, which I'll show you once it loads. So you see, for instance, edit user registration is /users/edit and then the user ID. And it's pretty basic. So all you have to do is go into config routes.rb, and we're going to scroll down, and right here I'll create a new line, and I'll say resources for conversations do, and then inside of here we'll have resources for messages. And just like that, we have all the routes for our message. Now we'll do a root index, so we'll route to the conversations index, which will give us the root of all of our conversations, which we coded in the last video. So good. In the next video we'll test out our application, but for now we'll do git add dot and then git commit dash m, and I'll name this commit fixed routes. Okay, good guys, we are done, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright guys, welcome to the last video of this section where we'll be testing out our application. And you see I have localhost port 3000 on 2 different windows, and since it's rendering the conversations view, I'm going to go to sign up, and then I'll just put in my password, and I'll confirm my password so that I can sign up, and then it'll redirect me to the conversations homepage. And I'll do the same thing on the other window, but I'll say testdummy@email.com. Password will be testing123, testing123, and I'll click sign up. And there we have it. So if I reload the page on the other window, okay, so I can do all users, test dummy, and all conversations, I have none, and the same thing on the other window. So I'll email test dummy and I'll just say, hey bro, send the reply, and I'll go over an email myself and I'll say hello. Great, so we can send replies, we can send emails to each other pretty easily, messages to each other. And yeah, I will see you in the next section.